You want better boundaries, but do you even know what boundaries really are? The way that boundaries are talked about nowadays is that they are this line in the sand. And at this line, people do what we want them to do, but that's not really what boundaries are about. Boundaries are about what you will accept in your life, right? It's more about what am I doing, but not about what they're doing, right? Because we can't control what other people do. We can't decide how the world is going to change, but we can decide how we are going to live our lives in the way that makes us the happiest and the most fulfilled. That is what boundaries are for. And I'm going to explain to you how they work and how you're going to start setting them. Now, one thing that I read that I really loved is that boundaries are the line where you end and the chaos starts, right? It's all about sovereignty, autonomy. It's all about living the life that we choose to live. It's about deciding who we let into that life and what actions we will accept in that life. Again, we can't change other people, but we can say, I don't accept that behavior, and then we can act accordingly. But what I also find really interesting in the research that I've done and in the work that I've done with other people is that your boundaries also determine your ability to receive, right? As you start pushing your boundaries outwards and taking up more space for yourself, the size of your boundaries is the size of the goodness that you can receive in your life, right? So let me give you an example. You're underpaid, you're undervalued, right? That is a boundary that's being crossed. And that's not how we traditionally think about boundaries. But when you say, I am worth more, I deserve more, you are pushing out that boundary. And in pushing that out, you are actually increasing your ability to receive because there's less of other people's junk, there's less of your own junk, and there's just more space for good things to flow in, right? And so let's talk about boundaries in relationships. So, the first part of setting boundaries is actually knowing how you feel about a situation. And all too often, we go through life thinking, like, ah, it's okay. I don't want to deal with that. That makes me uncomfortable. Right. And you know, I hate the word okay because it is the most ineffective word in the language. Choose better words. I have a whole video on that. So, when we set that boundary, the first step is to acknowledge how we feel about something. If something makes us uncomfortable, we need to decide how we are going to remove the discomfort from our lives or how we are going to transform the discomfort in our lives. And this is where setting the boundary comes in. For instance, you've got a partner who doesn't check in when they're going to stay out late, and that drives you crazy. It creates anxiety in your life. It is making you miserable. You set the boundary that, hey, if you want to be in this relationship and if you want to make me happy, then you need to start letting me know that you're okay if you're going to be out past 10 p.m. Right now, we can't control what the other person is going to do, but we can meet that with negative enforcement. So if they still don't do it, then that is an indicator to you that one, your boundaries are being violated, but also that you need to make a change in yourself so that you can live a more happy, fulfilled, relaxed, calm, comfortable life. And this requires some assertiveness. This is not the easy video on boundaries, right? Whenever you take away your compliance to somebody else, there is going to be some discomfort on their end because people are used to us being nice and pleasing them and making sure that they're comfortable at the sake of our own happiness. That they're going to go, well, now I'm uncomfortable. And it's like, well, yeah, and that is to be expected. That's completely normal. And unfortunately, that's part of being an adult. So I'm sorry, I don't have a great solution for that. But what they found is that when we practice assertiveness, it actually lowers our rates of depression. It lowers rates of anxiety. It increases confidence. Why? Because we are actually standing up and defending our need to exist in this world in a way that makes us happy, right? So while it feels uncomfortable at first, setting boundaries and being assertive about those boundaries creates more self-confidence and more self-worth in the long run. And if you need more reasons to convince you that setting boundaries is a really positive thing to do, listen to this. People who set boundaries also suffer from lower rates of burnout, not just set, but enforced too. Why? Because we're actually, one, understanding what it is that we need, and two, we're enforcing that into the real world. Again, a lot of the problems with boundaries, with anxiety, with burnout, they don't come from what we're doing, they come from what we're not doing. When we're not setting boundaries, when we are overperforming, overgiving, in order to keep other people in our lives by making it as easy as possible for them, that is what leads to the burnout, not the actual doing of the thing, but the constant reinforcement that we don't matter. And, from my personal experience of working with people, it's also the belief that we don't matter, right? That it will never get better. I think that also contributes heavily to burnout in every case that I've seen, because when we believe that it can't get better, our body, our whole mechanism, our organism has nothing to aspire to, right? When we set the boundary and go, that was hard, and then positive change starts happening, it inspires optimism and confidence in a way that's really hard to get otherwise. And here's another thing that I want to clear up. Being assertive about your boundaries is not being aggressive. Now, we have the idea that it's aggressive because people lash out, they kick back, and they're like, no, but I want you to do the dishwasher every day. No, but I want you to pick up the slack for my work. Of course they do. If you had somebody doing everything for you, would you want them to stop doing it? Of course not. But that's not fair. So it will be perceived as aggressiveness when in fact it is assertiveness. And I want you to remember this, because not understanding that is going to cause more stress. Once people say, well, you're not being nice anymore. It's like, but I am still a nice person. I just need you to help out sometimes, right? When you understand that and you hold that truth for yourself, they may or may not eventually come around, but you will not be beating yourself up over, oh, did I make a mistake? No, taking care of yourself is never a mistake. And that is why boundaries are so important. And that is why clear communication is so important. Now, here are some practical tips for setting more boundaries, right? The boundary, as we talked about earlier, is never about them. It is about you, you. So when you set the boundary isn't, you're not doing this. It is, I feel this way when you don't do this. I need this thing. And then there will be the inclination to add a second part to that sentence. You don't need the second part of the sentence, right? Being really assertive just means do your job. Like, you do what you are supposed to do in this relationship. So for a lot of people pleasers, there's the inclination to say, well, I need you to do this because da 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 da. No, you can be as assertive as you want when it comes to this. And then staying consistent and embodying your own boundaries is also really important. So if you set a boundary and then you give up, and you set a boundary and you relinquish that boundary, you are teaching them a new pattern of behavior that is worse than them just taking advantage of you or taking you for granted. So you have to be consistent. If there are socks on the floor, you will be consistent about enforcing that boundaries that I don't like socks on the floor every single day. If it is something that happens at work, like, you do that, because once you've set the boundary, if you backtrack, they now know that if they push, whine, whatever long enough, you will give up on your boundaries. You will give up on your self-worth. And that is not what we want to teach them. We want to teach them that our dreams, our life, our success, our well-being matter as much as theirs. And this is what we need to realize it. And remember, when the situation calls for it, no is a full sentence. No is a full sentence. You do not have to justify yourself. You do not have to excuse yourself for pursuing your highest good. You do not have to be apologetic for wanting to be happy and fulfilled in this life. No is a complete sentence. If there's something that's been bothering you and you're feeling nervous about setting boundaries, try starting with a small boundary this week. What is one small boundary that you can set of things that you will no longer accept in your life, and enforce that boundary? Start small. This is a whole new way of living for a lot of us. A lot of people were taught from very young age that we have to respect elders. We have to follow the system. We have to listen to our bosses. And it's going to feel really anxiety provoking at first, right? And then once you get over that, it's going to feel really liberating. But if you are not ready to go in guns blazing, then go in small, right? Set a small boundary, hold that boundary, and build that confidence in yourself, in your own self-worth. You will find that as you increase that boundary and you take out everybody's junk that you don't want in there, right? You expand your ability to receive love, to receive joy, and even to receive things like money and a better environment and all of the things that we want in life. Now, if building and living your best possible life is something that is of interest to you, that is what I teach. I teach you how to do it for yourself, through yourself. Then follow along. I've got lots more videos coming out in a book too, and I can't wait to connect with you.